First of all, welcome Rachel Lyons to the big interview here on Space Network. If you could just start by telling us what your role was and what Space for Humanity is.
Yeah, absolutely. So Space for Humanity is a nonprofit organization founded to sponsor people from all over the world to go to space. So there's a transformative experience that happens to astronauts when they go to space. So if you're listening, if you're watching, and you can imagine going out, like taking a rocket or a spaceship, going out into space, leaving our atmosphere, floating in weightlessness or microgravity, and looking down and seeing this fragile, beautiful, interconnected planet, like the brightest colors that you've ever seen in this infinite universe. And then it's the blackest black you've ever seen in every direction otherwise. That experience that happens to astronaut it transforms them. And they come back down with completely new perspectives about everything that's happening on our planet, from the environment to politics to humanitarian issues to even just their place in their local communities. And so Space for Humanity was founded to sponsor people from all over the world to go and have that experience. And I was very lucky when Dylan Taylor, our founder, first announced Space for Humanity. I was in the audience in 2017 at the New Space Conference. And he shared this mission of sending people to space to contribute to a collective shift in consciousness, or like a collective awakening. And for me, it was just exactly, I couldn't imagine a more profound and important mission. My first, what I would call awakening experience, like my first really big life-changing experience that changed my view of reality, was watching Neil deGrasse Tyson's Cosmos and learning about the scale of the universe when I was 19. And so from then on, I knew that space had a profound power to transform. And so I got involved with the organization really early on. I came on as a volunteer when it was a fully volunteer-run organization. And then my role grew, and I became the executive director in 2019. I led the organization until 2024. We successfully sent, under my leadership, 4 people to space. 2 have been since. We created partnerships with Blue Origin. We sent 2 individuals on Blue Origin, 2 on Virgin Galactic, under my leadership, and 2 have flown on Blue Origin since. We created partnerships across the sector, and through this mission, through really thoughtful selection of selecting people who are going to use this experience to make a difference with it, we've touched almost or around 500 million lives. So it's just really amazing to see how this mission has caught on, how many people have so easily fallen in love with this mission and want to get involved, want to support it, and becoming bigger and bigger, and how it is contributing to collective shifts around what space is for, as well as where we're going as humanity. One thing that I'll close with, Stu, is there was a talk that our founder Dylan Taylor gave a few years ago, and I'm going to slightly this. I'm not directly quoting him, but what he talked about is how we're evolving physically into space, and we're evolving technologically, and at the same rate need to evolve consciously. We need our minds, we need our beings, we need our understanding of reality to evolve at the same rate as these advances in technology, as these advances out into space physically. Because otherwise, we are destined to destroy ourselves. So that's the way that we don't do that is actually by prioritizing us evolving consciously, so that we can bring that a bigger picture of thinking into everything that we create. then we don't create things with unintended consequences. Then we create things that are for the good of humanity, for the good of the planet, for the good of our species. Yeah.
That's great. And I'm really glad that you laid out the mission sort of wider than just we're sending people to space, because, you could just do that and call it a day, but it's actually about a wider philosophy in a way. So that's really good to hear. And I did want to ask, what was your personal highlight, something that you're most proud of during your time there? And I mean, I suppose you've said, I sent 4 people to space, which is quite a flex already. But is there anything else that you would sort of say? I mean, you threw some other numbers out there about the reach that the organization has had. Maybe there's something behind the scenes that you personally quietly were like, yeah, I made that happen. Is there anything that you'd say during your time in that role was an absolute highlight?
Yeah. Well, I would say first is there's nothing that I'm like, I made that happen, because it was a team effort. I had an amazing team of passionate people, amazing board of directors, board of advisors, donors, partners, just all the things. And being the executive director was like such a privilege during those really formative years for the organization. 2 highlights come to mind. One is, I don't know if people watching here know this or if they were in space at the time, but you might be aware that after working on it for 15, 20 years, somehow Blue Origin and Virgin Galactic had their first crewed, not crewed, they're like first commercial flights within a week of each other, which is just wild. Like, how does that even happen? And we were right place, right time, super aligned mission with both of them. And we ended up getting, like, within a few weeks, like within the week of each other, we got a $1 million gift from Blue Origin. We were one of 19 space nonprofits to receive that. And then we also, got a call from Virgin Galactic. And they basically said that they wanted to partner with us for Richard. After Richard Branson went to space, they wanted to announce a campaign where anyone could donate to win a pair of tickets to go to space. And they wanted us to be the nonprofit beneficiary of that campaign. And so these were like the 2 just transformative moments in our growth as an organization. And like receiving, one is celebrating the fact that the industry had gotten there, like we were sending, people were going to space commercially now on these suborbital spacecrafts. And 2 is we were a massive part of that. And it was really, that was a huge win for us. The other piece that comes to mind is sort of fast forward a few months. So we did that campaign with Virgin Galactic and Richard Branson. The winners for the Virgin Galactic campaign had been selected, but it was a surprise. We did not tell them. And so the Virgin Galactic crew, along with the company that organized the campaign called Omaze, went to work, like scheming a surprise of letting the woman who won, Keisha, know. So we like sneak around the back to surprise her. So literally Richard Branson is showing up at her door. She has no idea. She had just thought that she was like a finalist in it, but she didn't know that anything had happened after that. And then, she's at the top of the stairs and she sees us and she screams and she's so excited. And like, I think she's like, who wouldn't cry? Like Richard Branson randomly showing up at your door to tell you that you're going to space. And it was just beautiful. And it was such a career highlight, like, to be able to do that and to be able to, show up there and surprise her and see her dreams get made. And she FaceTimes her daughter to tell her that she wants to take her. And then I got to just hang out with her for the next day. And we explored Antigua. She and her husband brought me on a little driving tour of the island. And it was for sure a career highlight to get to do that and have such like celebratory moments with people, like really changing people's lives. so I think that was a career highlight, and that was something that was just really special, and I feel so grateful to have been a part of.
That's amazing. That's a pretty good highlight, and obviously a fairly public element of the Space for Humanity work. But I am a little curious. You mentioned that the companies kind of approached you guys about the tickets or the seats that were available, but there must have been many a conversation leading up to that point. You would have had to have done quite a lot of convincing, I imagine. And is it just about telling a compelling story, a little bit like how you were describing, the wider philosophy a little bit earlier in our conversation? Are you just doing that and trying to appeal to the humanity of the various billionaires who are currently, in charge of a lot of the sector at this point?
Yeah. So yes and no. Not necessarily, I would say. So how that happened with those partnerships is it was just an overtime thing. So luckily we had a founder who, at the time, I believe he still is, but at the time he was the most active most active space investor in the world. And so he was really well respected in the industry. So it helps, and he brought in really brilliant people. We had really amazing advisors, really amazing people behind it. And so because of that, I think that there was like a level of respect that just happened right off the bat. And, so we were, as I mentioned, we were founded in 2017. I came on as the first full-time employee and executive director in 2019. And then these flights were in 2021, pretty sure 2021. And so it was, like multiple years of having quarterly conversations, giving them the updates, like just making sure that we were in their awareness. And then the other thing is I had some really brilliant team members who really would drill down on the fact that these years before these commercial flights are happening, these are foundation building years. I'm not only because the flights aren't happening, but also because we need to build a foundation of this organization. And so for those years before the flights were happening, we just were working our off, building the foundation of this organization so that we would be ready once those flights happened. And so once the flights happened, we were as ready as we could be, I would say. And with both of those circumstances, with the Virgin Galactic 2 seats, as well as with the Blue Origin $1 million, they called us, which was such amazing, amazing calls to receive. With Blue Origin, there's been a deep partnership there for a while now, and a lot of their people who have flown with them have had such profound experiences that after they fly, they're like, I want to help more people do this. And so then they give to our mission. But we're regular customers on Blue Origin. So just to say that, to make it super clear of what the relationships look like. Like we are customers. Mm-hmm. The Omaze Virgin Galactic thing was really special exception. Obviously, our new executive director, Antonio, is working on those relationships and, in new ways, which I can't speak for. But in general, we're supports. Like their success equals our success and vice versa. And we're customers.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks for that. Very interesting to hear how it works behind the scenes. You mentioned how you got involved with Space for Humanity was being at the conference where it was announced. But let's go back then. How did you get into that conference? How did you get into the space sector? What brought you to that room in the first place?
Yeah, totally. So as I mentioned, I discovered my love for space as a 19-year-old. I was someone with I was like getting by in life, like I was able to do well in school, and I was able to like do the things that would probably get me a good job, but like, did I have any real passion in it? Did I have anything really driving me that was bigger? No. And then I watched this documentary about space, and just everything changed. My whole view of reality changed. I saw exactly where I started. Like, we live on this gorgeous interconnected planet, and this existence in itself is a miracle. And that became my new worldview. And I was already studying in industrial engineering just because I was strong in math and science. I was going into my junior year at the University of Miami, and I decided to switch into aerospace engineering, even though everyone sort of thought I was crazy. They're like, it's already your junior year. You might have to say later, like, do you really want to be an aerospace engineer? Like, I had lots of doubts along the way, but I just knew there was no other option. I had to work in space. And one thing led to another. I sort of like dove straight into the deep end of space. Like, it was like there was no other option for me. And I joined all the clubs. I tried to run for president of the clubs at my very first meeting and didn't get it. But then I tried again the next year and, did get some positions. But it was like that. It was like shameless throwing myself into everything possible space, because that's how bad I wanted it. And I went to the Space Vision Conference, which is this, if you're a student watching this, join SEDS. It stands for Students for the Exploration and Development of Space. And they have a conference every year called Space Vision. And it's incredible. It's so good. And it was through meeting Frank White, who coined the term overview effect, which I started this session with, that then it's like one thing led to another. And then eventually I met another person who became a mentor, Loretta Whitesides. She founded like over the past couple of years, an organization called Space Kind, which is like a space leadership training company. But yeah, I was at a conference and I didn't have a summer internship. I think I was probably going into my senior year at that point. And I was like, crap, how am I going to have a career if I don't have an internship? And I was really nervous about it. And it was the beginning of the summer, and I went to this conference, and Loretta was there, and we connected, and she was like, well, if you don't have an internship, do you want to come intern for me? And I was like, what would that entail? And she was like, well, do you like sleeping under the stars? And I was like, yes. I love sleeping under the stars, but where are we going with this? And so that started my very non-traditional internship with Loretta Whitesides. I lived with her. I helped her with her projects. I helped her with her kids. I went to the camp that she went to when she was a little girl that she still works at. And I became like a counselor there. It was sort of more like wilderness training. And then part of it was we drove from Mojave, like that's where she was living. It's where Virgin Galactic was at the time. I think they still are, but she's moved since. But anyways, we drove from Mojave up to Northern California to the woods to live up in the woods for a month. And we stopped at the New Space Conference on the way. And the one keynote that I stepped inside for was Dylan Taylor's. and it was like jaw to the floor, amazed by this mission. And by how true it felt for me, like by how important it felt for me. And the other funny thing is that I went up to him afterwards, and I actually wasn't trying to get anything from it. I was actually just like, okay, you need to connect with this person. You need to meet Frank. You need to meet this person. Like, this has got to happen. Like, basically, like, I am here to help you. And then a few months later, I ended up reaching out and being like, how can I help? Like, can I get involved? And that's when he gave me the volunteer role. But yeah, that's how that all happened. It's fun to reflect on and see. But I would say it's like, if anyone listening is like, how does this apply to my life? The invitation is really just like, get yourself out there as much as you can. Follow the breadcrumbs, but don't be attached. There's a ton of breadcrumbs that I like just threw out that didn't lead to anything. And then there's breadcrumbs that like really lead to like the most incredible opportunities. And so just, yeah. And the other advice that I would give anyone is I know everyone says follow your passion, and that's really, really true, but it's also like let it be bigger and follow your vision. Okay, so if there's like a bigger vision, like a bigger impact or a bigger change that you want to see in the world, like there's, first of all, get yourself super, super jazzed about that. Like, don't forget that. Let yourself wake up every morning thinking about it. And then number two is find the people who are also on that same mission. Because honestly, the people who have been my biggest mentors have been the ones who have a really shared worldview to me, like a really shared way that they desire to impact the world. And that wasn't intentional, but it's not an accident. Okay, so look for the people who really like resonate with you on an I'm thinking of the word, like on a mission level, like what their mission is.
Mm-hmm. The aerospace engineering degree, I don't know if you've ever actually gone into being an engineer. Do you feel like doing that has helped in any way? Do you feel like maybe it's still just a nice to have ground level understanding when you're in some conversations?
Yeah. So there's two things come to mind. The first is, you're exactly right that, I can go to, in the past, I'd go to Blue Origin, go to Virgin Galactic, go to Axiom events and have like a very basic, I would call it basic, but a basic understanding of what's going on. Like I know some of the jargon, not all, some of the things that are happening. And that was good because then I, was able to talk more about it as well. But number two is I would say that like people really care about credentials, which is sort of like a sad reality. But how many people were like, whoa, you studied aerospace engineering, like all of a sudden I have like some higher level of validity than I did before, right, because I have a degree in aerospace engineering, which like the unfortunate truth is can actually serve if you're like fundraising or you're, you have big goals or things that you're going after. And so there was relevance to it in that way. I also think I thought I was going to be an aerospace engineer. Like I thought that I was. And through my education and the opportunities that came afterwards, I realized that wasn't the case anymore. And I don't have any regrets for that. I feel really grateful for my education, for the experience that it gave me, for the way of thinking that it gave me. And when I look at my aerospace engineer friends that are like working in it, I'm amazed by them. I'm amazed by what they create. And the last thing that I'll say about it is, in those friends, my most brilliant aerospace engineering and mechanical engineering friends love tinkering. Like they love being in the machine shop. They love like working on things. They love like getting their hands dirty and talking the talk. And for me, it was just never enjoyable for me. Like I just never really liked it. And yeah, and I think I've been really lucky to discover that and to find things that I do love.
Yeah, I think that's a really important lesson about following your career path and maybe thinking it's going one way and being open to something else. And you still are, very much within the sector, or certainly, when you were with Space for Humanity. So my next question is just to get your take on how you would characterize the space sector as it stands. What do you think are its biggest challenges? And maybe what are some untapped opportunities?
Yeah. It's a good question. I think I think that there's probably a huge array of answers that people could give. I mean, there's a lot of challenges in space. Obviously, there's challenges in even just like making any of this happen, and there's challenges in like the costs that it is to make these things happen. There's challenges in like the level of innovation that's required to be successful. There's challenges in like human life is at risk in some of these more audacious goals. When we're talking about human spaceflight and interplanetary travel, it's a risk that I'm now thinking about like humans becoming interplanetary, and there's a risk that we are Earth beings. Like we are creatures of the Earth. We've evolved here for millions and millions and millions of years. And so taking us into like a different environment with a different level of gravity just poses so many risks. Some we've done research on, but like many more we haven't. Like, can we reproduce in space? Can babies be delivered in space? Can pregnancies be brought to full term in space? If we're talking about becoming interplanetary and going further out, these are all questions that we need answers to. And it's a risk. It's a risk to go out into the unknown and discover these things as well. Obviously, there's research that can be done that can maybe like support us in having some idea prior, but no matter what, it's a risk. I would say I'm not talking a lot about the challenges, but one other challenge is like there is, it's like an antiquated industry. Like there's a lot of outdated things. There's a lot of outdated cultures, a lot of outdated norms. And there's like also inside of the industry, there's a lot of bureaucracy. And then on the other side of the spectrum, there's leadership that is more, I'm trying to say this sensitively, but I can't think of any other words. Like there can be leadership that's more tyrannical, and not saying that they're like actually tyrants walking around the industry, but people who are like, we're doing it this way. And if you're not doing it this way, you're out of the company. And then the other thing is that there's polarization. Like there is a good amount of polarization across the sector around what people think is like, what's the next step? How do we solve this problem? What problems are actually important? Do we go to the moon or do we go to Mars? And one of the biggest powers of space is its power to unite. And when JFK said we're going to the moon in this decade, the entire country had to unite under that goal. And miraculously, it happened. And when there's such a complex space economy with, private sector, government, commercial, like, some people doing this, some people doing that. It's just like the energy can be a little across the board. And I think sometimes it can be really valuable to come together and choose to share goals and share missions. So those are some of the challenges that I see. I think that the biggest like power of space that I see is its power to unite, like its power to wake us up, its power to wake us up to who we are, and to who we are, to where we've come from, to, the possibilities of where we're going. It's power to like show us deeper layers of what life really is. And I think that our whole culture is in need of a wake-up call around who we actually are, around how interconnected we are, around how much of a miracle it is to be here. And I think space has the power to bring that awareness to people. And if that awareness were like widespread, we would have a different world. Like we would have a world that honors people and the planet. We would create systems that aren't just completely extracting from the earth in a way that's unsustainable. There wouldn't be genocide. Like possibly, maybe even, I know there'd be a lot less war. I don't know if there'd be no war, but I know there'd be a lot less war. So like life would just be very different. And I think that as a culture, we're ready for an up level. Like we're ready for an up level in the way that we view ourselves and we view our place on this planet and the way that we operate. But it's also takes enough people choosing to look out or to look in and to let those changes happen and then create from those places.
That's really inspiring, and thank you for that answer. And I think it leads perfectly into what I wanted to sort of maybe wrap up on, which is to get your take on maybe the slightly more, I want to say mundane, but day-to-day elements of the space sector. I'm sitting here in Edinburgh where there's lots going on in terms of the commercial space sector. We're not really talking about human spaceflight here quite as much. But, it's very easy, as you've demonstrated already, to bring a sense of awe to the conversation when we think about space exploration and we think about human spaceflight. But for the things that are a bit less visible, satellite infrastructure, data processing coming from that, and the various downstream applications of that data, is there a way to draw the dots between these elements to get people thinking about the slightly more day-to-day commercial aspects of space?
Yeah. I'd like to get like the general population thinking more about that.
I guess so, and also to sort of see if there's a through line between what I think in general, the public do tend to find space inspiring, but it's about moving people from thinking about the planets and thinking about astronauts to satellite infrastructure in their day-to-day lives. Is there a way to bring some of that awe and inspiration to these slightly more invisible commercial elements of the sector? I think is kind of what I'm looking for.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends. There's a lot of ways that question could be addressed. It depends who you're talking to. Depends what they're interested in. Like if you bring in like a sales perspective, if you want to sell someone on something, it's like, what is going to make them connect with this? And so that's different depending on who they are. I mean, I would say at the most basic level, I think about a rocket launch I went to a couple of years ago. It was in Florida. I was on the side of a highway. I didn't even like go to the actual like facilities. I just was on the side of a highway watching this rocket go to space. And it was profound. It was beautiful. And one of the most incredible things was me sitting there and thinking that thing is going to space. That rocket that took, I don't even know what the budgets are of these, but like, millions of dollars, probably just as many hours, probably like thousands of people have created this, and also like decades and decades or more, actually, like hundreds of years of technology as it's been developed that has led to this being created. And now I'm witnessing this like marvel go to space. And so I would say at its most like basic form, it's simple. Like I actually don't know that we need to convince people that the more complex or whatever seeming elements are, well, I don't think there's any convincing that it's relevant. Like it is relevant. We're sending people to space. Humans are absolutely genius. This is incredible that we have the level of intelligence to be able to send things off planet. So yeah, I think that the answer is that it's simple. And I think as someone who's sharing, getting in touch with the awe yourself will support others in really being able to touch that awe as well.
I certainly hope so. Yes. I mean, I think there is a way to bring it all together, that the things that maybe aren't so spectacular and visible, but are still part of the space sector in other really vital day-to-day ways, can still be spoken about and celebrated. So thank you. Yeah, I mean, that's given me plenty to think about. I'd like to know what you're up to next. I think you're out of the space sector currently. Would you ever want to come back? Is there anything on the horizon?
Yeah, I am still in the space sector. I am. So basically the whole time throughout Space for Humanity, I was really devoting to my own personal growth. So I did personal development programs. I did leadership seminars. I did whatever, like really, you name it. I may have done it. I just across the board of personal development, of doing inner work. I spent years, and I'm still studying all of that. And I realized along the way, while I was working with Space for Humanities, one is as I got healed myself internally. Like, as I got past my own stuff, I was able to show up more strongly as a leader, more compelling as a speaker. I was able to enjoy it more, like less anxious in the day to day, meeting my goals, leading more effectively. Like everything got better as I committed to my own inner growth. And then I also realized that the awakening that I'm committed to, like the shift in consciousness that I want to see happen on this planet, like the wake up call that I want to see happen, space is one of the ways to make it happen, but it's not the only way. And there's actually a lot of ways to do it. And so in my transition out of Space for Humanity, I've actually moved into like leadership, mentorship, coaching, like strategy, working one-on-one with leaders in the space sector, as well as outside, to support them in rising as a leader through doing their own inner work. And it's just something that I love. I love working one-on-one with people. And I've worked with people who are running 80-person teams at Blue Origin, startup founders of lunar landers, people who are in the midst of founding space marketing companies, as well as people who it's like they resonate with this view in whether or not they work in space. So it's just amazing for me also to see such like a direct impact and growth happening with my clients every week. There's nothing that I love more than, and this is exactly what I did with Space for Humanity, but like supporting amazing leaders to go and be even more amazing, like supporting amazing leaders to lead from a place of wisdom and understanding of, about themselves and about people and about the planet. And I find that as leaders commit to their own inner growth, like all of life becomes more fulfilling. They become more successful, yes, but all of life becomes more fulfilling.
That really, I think, aligns quite closely with what Space Network is also hoping to do. So we'll make sure that anyone that is interested in hearing more about your work or reaching out to get in touch with you can find all the details on the website and on social media. So thank you so much for your time, Rachel. It's been great to hear your unique perspective in the sector, and you always bring such an inspiring perspective to it all, when, I think a lot of the time there's a lot of nitty gritty getting into the real reads of how things grow and how things develop. And sometimes it is really important to take a step back and look at the big picture. And I think you've really provided that, and generally do provide that. So thanks again for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Stu.